Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's show. I'm your host, Zach Drew. Listen, we're going to be talking about the LA riots and, the protests that have been, the demonstrations all throughout the country over the last several days. For those of you that watch my show regularly, know that I actually don't spend a great deal of time on the program talking about wars and civil wars. And there is a reason for that. Let you know, in my line of work, as you might call it, I have seen a pattern. The headlines drop, the talking heads start spinning their theories, and what happens every single time? I watch it, and it is tempting, but I watch the views skyrocket, and then nothing actually happens. But the cycle keeps repeating. They move on to the next big thing, another dramatic headline, another urgent update. In my opinion, I've always thought, I'm not going to do that. It just seems like a bunch of smoke and mirrors to me. If I'm going to talk about it, it's going to have to be legitimate. I'm going to have to feel something about it, right? So meanwhile, the people who got it wrong, they're still talking. And the audience, they're still watching. And I've never understood it. Why? I guess the only thing that you could say to bring understanding to it would be, we have an addiction to the drama, right? The adrenaline, the hype. And that's why I do try to set my commentary to a different tune, if you will, because I'm not here to, feed you empty speculation. I always pay attention to the long game, that all my subjects are about the long game. I track what they're actually building, what they're openly saying, and even saying behind the scenes. And when something real starts to manifest, then I start talking. And today I'm talking. Because what's happening right now in Los Angeles truly is not just another flash in the pan. The chaos on the ground is real. And no, I'm not saying we are in a civil war. But I am saying we're seeing the kind of unrest that can spark one. And I can say that we will one day, unfortunately, I believe that we will see a civil war in America. A legitimate threat is unfolding right now. Whether it materializes into full-blown conflict or not, I don't know. But that's what we're here to talk about today. So let's spend just 2 minutes and let's start from the beginning. Things to lay the foundation that you likely already know, but we got to do it, right? To go somewhere, we got to lay a foundation. So let's start from the beginning. According to the Wall Street Journal, the first demonstrations began Friday in Los Angeles. This would have been the previous Friday, when residents reacted to federal agents engaged in what appeared to be an immigration enforcement operation. Homeland Security spokeswoman Tricia McLaughlin said that some 800 protesters surrounded and breached a federal law enforcement building in Los Angeles. Protests continued throughout the weekend, with a particularly tense standoff occurring Sunday evening in downtown Los Angeles. We saw all of that. We saw the destruction, the cars staying on fire. The cars, being lit on fire. And it says protests continued throughout the weekend, with a particularly less tense standoff occurring Sunday evening in downtown Los Angeles. California highway patrol officers used flashbang, stun grenades, and tactical positioning to push protesters off Highway 101. Demonstrators threw 3 branches, scooters, and fireworks from a freeway overpass onto police vehicles, and some protesters set fire to at least 5 Waymo driverless taxis. That was all within the first 2 days. The Journal added protesters also gathered outside a federal detention center in downtown Los Angeles Saturday night and were pushed back by law enforcement using tear gas and flashbangs, according to local news footage. The Los Angeles police declared an unlawful assembly in the area and detained multiple people. Since then, 1,500 demonstrations have been planned throughout the country. Multiple cities have had demonstrations already. A couple of different headlines just to kind of bring us up to speed that you've already likely seen. This was from the first, 5 days or so. President Trump says Tom Homan should arrest Gavin Newsom for aiding and abetting insurrectionist mobs now burning down LA. Here's another one. Gavin Newsom, Trump is unhinged, speaking like an authoritarian. Said within the article, the California governor blasted Trump amid the president's deployment of National Guard troops to the Los Angeles area. And you saw how things have basically started to calm down almost immediately. First, it was several hundred, 1,500, then another 2,000. Stephen Miller blasts Mayor Bass for holding LA hostage with mob violence to shield city from immigration enforcement. It says in the article, White House Deputy Chief of Staff Stephen Miller tore into Los Angeles Mayor Karen Bass on Tuesday, slamming her for blaming the Trump admins, federal immigration enforcement for sparking riots in the city. Now, let me tell you this. Okay, so here's the thing. What's happening in LA is the logical result of years of open borders and amnesty. And that's why some are stating we need a total moratorium on new immigration in the country, at least until we can deport the illegals that came in under the Biden administration. I think it's going to be really difficult. I'm just going to throw it out there. 15,000 a day for all 4 years. That's what it would literally take to do that. But nonetheless, I want to play this quick video, then we're going to jump into it. Here is a hot take on that from Nate Morris.
Hey, Nate Morris here. Let me start by saying that I believe the fate of Western civilization hangs in the balance, predicated on the way that we respond to the illegal immigration crisis going on right here in America. The events in California and the things that are going on as we speak are an absolute and utter disgrace. And I want to thank President Trump and Secretary Pete Hegseth for their leadership and continue to call for zero tolerance across the board for all illegal immigrants. I remember the 1992 speech of Pat Buchanan at the Republican National Convention. And I remember him talking about the death of the West. And Western civilization will be gone as we know it unless we respond aggressively and we take immediate action to fix our immigration crisis once and for all by sealing our border, saying no to DACA, saying no to birthright citizenship, and saying no to any carve-outs or any special exceptions in our system. And tonight, I'm calling for a moratorium on any additional immigration coming into our country until we deport every single one of Joe Biden's 20 million illegal immigrants that have invaded our country. What I see going on in our country today related to immigration makes me sick. And I blame the career politicians that have been at the helm for generations, including Mitch McConnell, who's continued to vote for amnesty over and over again throughout his career. It is our decision, it is our choice, and the way that we respond will determine not only the fate of America, but the fate of humanity and the world as we know it.
All right, so the simple answer is that the left wants civil war, and they are testing their boundaries. And they're able to do this through their Trojan horse of cultural Marxism. Let's read one more quick article from the Daily Wire. There are two groups of people in the United States and across the West. People who wish to build institutions and create successful operating systems, and then people who wish to tear them down. You look at the protesters and you see many of them flying Mexican flags as well as Palestinian flags, and it's a good indicator that you're on the wrong side of any protest if you were the one flying a Palestinian flag. These protesters were roaming around suggesting they need to be in the United States while flying the Mexican flag. Kind of bizarre, right? That's an amazing thing because they're not saying Mexico and the United States are in solidarity. Precisely the opposite. They are saying that they came to the United States as a quasi-invading force, and they've come here as refugees from Mexico and therefore left Mexico for a reason. This would be the equivalent of Cuban migrants attempting to escape Cuba, who then fly the Cuban flag while attempting to stop ICE officers. It would be bizarre. Cubans coming to the United States from Cuba generally don't fly the flag of the country that oppressed them and forced them to leave. If they are flying that flag, it's to overthrow the government of Cuba. And so if anybody is watching this program and you're wondering why President Donald Trump has done the things he has done, sitting in the National Guard, it is because he literally got elected because of this. He got elected because America was sick to death of watching the borders collapse, the rule of law disappear, and the fabric of Western civilization being ripped away. And all while, we're all being told to smile and clap for it in the name of progress. But Trump said no. He's fulfilling his campaign promises. He promised to secure the border, deport illegals, enforce the law. And now, with LA on fire, mobs storming federal buildings, attacking law enforcement, torching cars, what does he do? He's taking action. He is fulfilling his campaign promises. Newsom calls it authoritarian. No, it's leadership. And this chaos isn't random, right? With 1,500 protests planned nationwide, it's coordinated. It's a test. They're seeing how far they can go before the system breaks. And once again, Trump is in the way. So if you're watching what's happening in LA, don't ask, why is Trump being so aggressive? Ask instead, why is it taking this long for somebody to finally stand up? Because this right here is the very reason millions and millions of people voted for Donald Trump. You know, we don't just do daily news, right? My objective is not just simply tell you what is happening. I want to explain to you why it is happening and what it means for the future. Because I've said this on the program before. And I say this because I know so many people personally, and you do too, that will one day, 10 years down the road, they're gonna be sitting there somewhere and say, how in the world did we get like this? When did this happen? They're just totally unaware that it's happening right now. Oh, there's some more riots in LA, people are upset. You have no idea what's happening. It's in the moments we are living right now that you'll be able to point back to. From cancel culture, deleting not just people, but from entire eras of America, to the woke activists attracting literally tens of thousands of young people to believe in their destructive ways, the cultural Marxists influencing every area of our lives, from schools and universities to public office, to the militant climate change activists crying to save the world while ushering in another Trojan horse, which is being led in through a Trojan horse in and of itself, which is cultural Marxism, that how we're destroying the earth. They cry to save the world while simultaneously destroying it themselves. And I sit there and I think to myself, how can people be so misguided? From that list I just said, from cancel culture, militant, climate activists, BLM, woke activism, Antifa, cultural Marxism. How can people be so misguided? Because not a single one of those even comes close. And just some basic research would prove this. Not a single one of them is a grassroots movement. And that's why so many people that are my age that do lean right will say, oh, they just really believe that, and who am I to say? They lean into it thinking, well, they're just passionate. It's a grassroots movement. No, it's not. It's not even close to being a grassroots movement. Not one of these movements have occurred naturally. Rather, a special programming has transpired. Nothing from original thoughts, seeing wrong being done and acting. And a lot of the people that I know, they sit in pews on Sundays, and that's always been confusing to me too. So many in America or in American churches belong to these movements. And I think Jeremiah 50, I have it in my notes, Jeremiah 56 speaks to this. My people have become lost sheep. Their shepherds have led them astray. They have made them turn aside on the mountains. They have gone along from mountain to hill and have forgotten their resting place. If your church is going in any of these directions, they are not being led by Christ, the Good Shepherd. Let me tell you right now. Every time I talk about this, I'm always reminded of that last liberal church listed in Revelation chapter 3, where Jesus is talking about the Laodicean church who thinks they're doing great, but in reality are doing so very poorly. That's the church where Jesus is literally knocking to get on the inside. he's speaking to the Laodicean church there. I don't just want to talk to you about what's happening. I want to talk to you about why it's happening and what it means for the future, because a generation, and I'm a fighter, not just for me, not just for those around me, for my kids, for the future, because a generation is being shaped. And it's not by coincidence, it is by intentional strategy, this psychological manipulation aimed at changing values, weakening national identity, right? We can't love to be American anymore. And for what purpose? To gradually dismantle America from within to make way for something fundamentally different. And this is why they must take down America. I don't know if this is going to spark into the civil war, to a global unrest to take down. I don't think but you can see it's being primed. And this is why, like I said, they must take down America, because we stand in the way of all they want to achieve. America isn't just a geographical location or a political experiment, even though it is, right? But it's because it has stood, despite all its flaws, as the last great obstacle to the takeover of a global system. It's impossible to implement such a system while a constitutionally anchored, liberty-defending people stand in the way. But guess what? For them to achieve this, America has to go. Why? Well, for a few reasons. Well, one, because there's millions of armed citizens who refuse to be slaves, because there are, thousands of Bible-preaching churches still warning about the times. A constitution that acknowledges rights come from God, not government. And that's why they hate us. That is why they call us dangerous. That is why they call us extremists. They call us a threat to democracy. Because we can still say there is absolute truth. Because we still believe that Jesus is Lord, not the state. Because we, still preach there's only one name under heaven by which we must be saved. That's why they must take down America. Not just for geopolitical conquest, not just for, economic control, but because America, when it remembers its spiritual roots, it becomes a roadblock to their entire end-time agenda. And that is why there is such a huge mark on our president. And so what do they do to the masses? They wage psychological warfare, cultural sabotage. They burn the system from within, because they know that if they can't beat us from without, that's how they're going to do it. But if we fall, so will the rest of the world. So will the rest of the world. Why is this happening? I like history. And we know about Karl Marx, right? The father of Marxism, because Marxism, when it was created, right, it divided people into two categories. And what did it do? It pit them against each other. It was all about the working class man and the oppressors, or the proletariat and the bourgeoisie, the oppressed and the oppressors. That's what it was. And Karl Marx, what did he do? I mean, he saw capitalism as oppressing the masses. He also saw religion as the opioid of the masses that allowed them to be oppressed by capitalism. So yes, Marx was anti-capitalism, but he was also rabidly atheistic. But the goal for Marxists was to get the world to an atheistic post-capitalist society. But they understood, and I'm going to wrap it into what we're seeing today. They understood that would only be possible by destroying the cultural hegemony, which you've heard me talk about on this program before. It's a fancy word that basically means the cultural hegemony that they are seeking to destroy. It refers to domination, rule maintained through ideological or cultural means. It's usually achieved through social institutions, which allow those in power to influence everything from values and norms, ideas, worldview and behavior for the rest of society. Now, anytime a Marxist would go into a country, the warfare would be to try to establish who would they deem as running some of these institutions and how to pit them against everybody else. And so depending on what part of the world you're in, they might have a different religion. For example, like let's say you're the enemy in America and you're a white American Christian. Well, if they were trying to take down a government in another country, you might be, black, and then the other, whatever nationality it is, and not even of the Christian faith. What they do is they try to pit it. They try to take it down and to replace it with that. But they can only do that if they divide it from within. So cultural Marxism is different because people didn't like Marxism. Like I've said before, they didn't like that it ended in the gulag. So they put some new paint on that barn and they created something called cultural Marxism. And cultural Marxism is what we're seeing in America destroy America. And cultural Marxism also starts out with the foundation of two bases, right? The oppressed versus the oppressors. But then cultural Marxism then creates an even further exhaustive list of categories and subcategories of people beyond that. So to take down a system, we know what? Like I said, that a house divided cannot stand. We have to create division. So, newsflash, I got this list from Vodi Bakum. Awesome dude. Awesome. He's actually moving back to the United States. Incredible books. Love him. You got to check him out. But he created this list. And he gave what they deem as the culture hegemony in America. And so you are the enemy if you are any of these 7 things. If you are white, male, cisgendered, straight, able-bodied, Christian, and American. And everyone who is not that is a victim of the cultural hegemony established by those individuals. So if you're white, if you aren't white, Marxists will exploit you for that, right? So you're the enemy if you are those 7 things. And if you're not, if you're those 7 things, you're the oppressor, is what they say. And if you're not, you are a victim of those 7 things. And so if let's say you can check off 5 of those boxes, but not 2 of them, well then your intersectionality of oppression says that you're oppressed on 2 of them, but you are the oppressor on 5 of them. This is where we get the term intersectionality. And I say that to bring it to this. Let me read some scripture. Matthew 24, 3 through 8. The signs of the times and the end of the age. It says that just on Jesus. Now, as Jesus, sat on the Mount of Olives, the disciples came to him privately, saying, "Tell us, when will these things be? And what will be the sign of your coming and the end of the age?" So, okay, give us a list. And he did. Matthew 24, Mark 13, Luke 21. All of this was about the end times from a different angle. And so Jesus basically said, okay, you want to know what the world's going to be like before the end of the age? He said, well, first off, take heed that no one deceives you. For many will come in my name, saying, I am the Christ, and will deceive many. Now, there is an interesting take on that first part. Some people say, people are going to come saying, I'm Jesus. And they're going to deceive many. And another take is that they're going to come saying that Jesus is Jesus, right? People are going to come in my name and then will deceive many, saying they're going to come in my name saying, hey, I'm Christian, I believe Jesus is Jesus. And then once you trust them, that's the point in which they deceive you. And you're going to hear of wars and rumors of wars. See that you are not troubled, for all of these things must come to pass, but the end is not yet. For nation will rise against nation and kingdom against kingdom. There will be famines, pestilence, earthquakes in various places, and all these are the beginning of sorrows. But what we're seeing, I believe, and I'm not I don't want to read too much into it, but I do believe that where Jesus says, nation will rise against nation and kingdom against kingdom, I believe he is talking about cultural Marxism in the last days. Because if you read it, like I've said before, it's like in the English language, it sounds like he's saying country will rise against country and country will rise against country, right? Nation against nation and kingdom against kingdom, two different words, same thing. No, when Jesus said in Matthew 24 that nation will rise against nation, the original Greek word is ethnos, totally different word than kingdom. Where it says kingdom against kingdom, yeah, that is America versus Russia, or what this country versus that country. But where it says nation against nation, it's a totally different word. It's ethnos. And ethnos doesn't just refer to countries. It points to, yes, ethnic groups, races, or people that literally are just united by some type of culture or certain customs or beliefs. And so whenever you read it like that, Jesus is saying one of the things that's going to mark the sign of the times is that ethnos will rise against ethnos and country against country. And we're seeing it. And the enemy knows. The enemy knows. And like I've said like 500 times this show, the one thing that stands in the way of a total and complete global world order is a strong America. If they can destroy America, they can do whatever they want throughout the world. It is the last blockade in this entire plan. And so the enemy, knowing from Scripture, we know that the enemy divides. A house divided against itself cannot stand. So what is a broad philosophy that can be pushed upon an entire people group? It's cultural Marxism, which divides so that they can conquer. Where we see in cultural Marxism, unlike anywhere else in the world, is in the country that is the last bastion of hope throughout the world. I absolutely believe that cultural Marxism is a tactic of Satan to take down America. And so I'm close to being out of time, so I want to say this. So where does this leave us? Well, the truth is, yes, much of what we're seeing has been foretold. Jesus told us in Matthew 24 that deception, division, war, and unrest would escalate as the end draws near. And we know that these things must happen before his return. But I'm telling you, that doesn't mean we throw in the towel. Well, Zach, it's coming anyway. No, it means we need to stand with our eyes wide open. The Scripture also says to be able to discern the times in which we live. We don't fight to stop what is written. We don't fight to stop prophecy. We fight because we're not called to be passive in the face of evil. We push back against it. We push back against lawlessness. We speak truth. We defend freedom because we are Christians. We contend for souls. And we do it knowing that even as the darkness grows, we are called in the midst of all of this to shine brighter. I'm out of time. I want to thank you for watching this week. And I do want to encourage you, listen, if you've been watching the program, I would just encourage you to go to zachdrewshow.com and click that bright orange donate button and get involved, become a monthly recurring partner, or you can write us the old-fashioned way. Zach Drew Show, P.O. Box 797, Decatur, Illinois, 62525. We need your help. We have a lot of awesome plans. We've been working on this huge newsletter to send out to every single one of our partners. We announced it a couple of months ago. And then as soon as we announced it, we saw our funds just take a crazy dip. And so it's totally nerve-wracking to send out this newsletter for all of our plans that we have, but we're going to do it anyway. But I will let you know that we are in a season, a dry season financially for the show. So if you want to step up and get involved, we sure would appreciate it. To keep this message going forward. And remember, a lot of people my age, right? If you want to communicate and effectively communicate with somebody, one of the benefits, honestly, is being their age. And We have a wide range of people that watch the show, but a lot of the older generation is saved, right? And so my objective is to lead that younger, wandering generation into that promised land, which is Jesus today, right? So stand with us, get behind us, and become a monthly partner. I'm out of time. I'll see you next week.